listeners, and a warm welcome to the Highland Bullpen, and congratulations to the Atlanta Braves, the world champions, the kings of baseball for 2021. Now, here in the Highland Bullpen, we always believe in giving credit where it's due, even if it is for Alan. So, Alan, you deserve the plaudits because we all went for the Astros, you backed the Braves, and you are right. Well done, Alan, and you must have been delighted to see Atlanta do it after you defying the rest of the bullpen.
I've spent many a Saturday evening defying the bullpen, so I thought, why not defy the bullpen when it's an opportunity to take a punt on who's going to win the World Series. I don't know there's an awful lot of science around my pick. I thought there was a lot of chatter about the Astros, about the Braves. There was something about the Braves. Interestingly, they were the team who the least winningest team, I think, is the grammatically incorrect phrase, but fact of all teams who got into the playoffs. So they came through and they proved the old adage about you only have to beat the teams in front of you. You only have to get the backing of one member of the bullpen, and you can go on and get the World Series rings, or what they do get the rings, I think, at the World Series as well, don't they? So, no, delighted to see that. It's a wee bit sorry for our pal Rob over his Astros podcast, but the Astros are a strong team. They're not going to disappear anywhere quickly. It'll be interesting to see if the Braves can replicate that sort of result later. The other thing I should maybe mention as well is the good old MLB Europe lads. They sent us their welcome pack at the start of the year, and they did ask us for a World Series prediction. I copped out a wee bit, and my World Series prediction was that the Tigers would not win the World Series. So I was correct twice, Richard. Surprisingly correct twice. But next year, I will put more effort into my end of March prediction for who the World Series will be between and what the score will be. Somebody has to be right, so let's make it 3 out of 3 for me.
That sounds good, Alan. And Dave Jr., did you enjoy the World Series? Obviously, it's always a baseball showpiece, but some are better than others. How do you think the 2021 series compared with those of the past?
I really enjoyed it, Richard, and this felt like, I've said it a lot, it felt like my first real season as a true baseball fan. I've got to admit, when it came to the final, it wasn't like my love of football when I'm watching a neutral final. I'm not sure if it's because the whole thing was played out over 6 different days, over, I don't know, maybe 8, 9 actual days, when you look at things, taking a break into account. And I found myself not being able to get fully engaged with it. I was able to watch, we're talking late at night here in the UK. I think the earliest any game started is 1 a.m. It may have been better to have avoided the scores and caught up with the game recaps. I know Dave watches and keep up to date that way. But I did try to watch the opening parts of each game. And again, what the Americans do better than anyone else, the pomp around these things, the entrances, the opening, the drama, they do it so well across all of their sports. Each time, I'm trying to remember some of the legendary heroes that they brought out, but at each stadium, their set of fans would make the situation absolutely unique, and it must send chills up the players' spines to come out and do their thing in front of those loving, loyal fans. The Astros knocked the White Sox and the Red Sox out on their march to the World Series final. So I wasn't too sure. Do I want the Astros to win so that I can say we were defeated by the champs, or was I bitter and twisted and wanted them to lose? But I think I just tried to enjoy the spectacle. Atlanta Braves, to me, felt almost a bit like a mysterious, sexy foreign team, in that I just hadn't came across them too much during with all of our teams being based in the American League, all of our games generally focusing on teams that weren't the Braves. It was quite hard to associate with them. And something that Alan didn't mention there, forgive me if you did, Al, but the Braves did all this and they lost one of baseball's best stars during the season in Ronald Acuna. I can't remember if he was in your fantasy team, Richard, but that's like, losing your star player and still being one of the underdogs for the whole tournament. I don't know, maybe like an Everton going and winning the FA Cup and losing their star player and going all the way. And fair play to them. That hostile atmosphere in Houston, on an artificial surface, when you've got all those external factors we've spoken about before, the roof, the artificial pitch, the experienced team. They went to Houston twice and won. I think the very first pitch of the very first game was knocked out of the park by Soler. It really set the tone. Later, when Houston were able to take the games back from Atlanta and come back to Houston itself, I think the feeling was that this was Houston's chance to then march on and win the series. But the Braves just stamped it out. They work hard as a team. They've got a great infield, and they've got a fantastic attitude. I think they're quite they must be, they came out top of all 30 teams, but they've done themselves real credit. I'm not too sure about the stats, when they last won it or their real recent history. As I said, they're not on my radar too much. But yeah, well played to them. They've earned that title as champs.
Well, thanks for that, Dave Jr. And yeah, I totally agree with you. They are somewhat of a mystery package, and the previous Atlanta's previous World Series win was 99, and the Braves as a franchise had won one World Series each in each of their previous two incarnations in Milwaukee Braves, and was it Boston Braves, the previous one before then? Yeah, so no, it was an impressive performance. And Yorkshire Dave, I know you're a man that likes the GGs. I know you like your horse racing. And what the Braves reminded me of was a horse that's been really well ridden by its jockey, hangs around near the middle to the back of the pack, staying out of trouble, making sure it's there. And then in those last 4 or 5 furlongs, just stretching out and hitting the lead at exactly the right point.
That's a good analogy, isn't it? They did time their run perfectly. I think we spoke about this in our last program, that they didn't have a winning record until well into August. And, as Dave Allen said, that, was Alan won it, the least winning most, was it? Did they have Was it 88?
Something like that,
that they won. When you look at the Giants, didn't even make the championship thing, 107. So, it just shows you what he can do. And what Dave said is absolutely right about Acuna. It's an outfielder, isn't he? One of the most brilliant players in the game. But what the Braves did is they went out and they didn't just buy one guy. They bought 2 or 3, didn't they? And Soler, who you quite rightly mentioned, Jorge Soler, he was the MVP for the whole series, wasn't he? And he's 2 home runs in different games, especially the one in what turned out to be the deciding game when he hit it over Bobby Dynamite's rail tracks, didn't he? The one time that they'd opened the roof at Minute Maid Park, which is an extremely rare event because it was, it's normally so hot, isn't it, there? And the reason why they have the roof on, it's not like you would imagine here in the UK to keep the rain and snow and the cold out. It's because it's too hot. And the flipping ballpark is air conditioned, I think. So it was that cool that night that they decided to open the roof, and Soler hit it out there, and that was what gave them a fantastic lead, wasn't it, for the final game, which incredibly they won. Was it 7-0 the final?
Yep. Shutout. Yep. 7.
And you feel for the Astros and for our mate, let's say him again, Rob Fontenot, who does the Houston's podcast, and he, I think I've sort of retweeted his one of his podcasts to say just very philosophical about the whole thing, and this was before they'd actually were out of the, they were 3-1 down, weren't they? And he was just saying how this is the third World Series they've been in the last 5, and he just said, whatever happens, we're happy to be where we are, the Astros, because there's 28 other teams who wish they were there. And, they are a great team, and they just got beat by another really good team. And what you said there about them is, I don't think another team has done that, has it? They've done the franchise has been in 3 different cities and has won it in those 3 different cities. I think they've won it twice in Atlanta, haven't they? 95, I think, was the last time they won it in Atlanta. And then, of course, Milwaukee and Boston, you're right, back in the early 1900s. But I don't know who else has done that. The Dodgers have obviously done it, Brooklyn and Los Angeles, but I don't know if anyone else has done it in 3 different cities. So I think, good on the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, they seemed reasonably popular winners as well. I think there's a bit of history there because Ted Turner, obviously the media mogul, who for many years owned the Atlanta Braves and CNN. I think Atlanta games were covered on a national basis via Ted Turner's network when he expanded the Superstation, as it was called then. So there's actually Atlanta Brave fans in quite a lot of different parts of the States as well. So they kind of got a wider support than people might realise. But yeah. It was a fantastic series. I mean, I do feel a bit for the Astros as well, and not just because of our friend. When you actually look at it, in terms of hits over the series, there was hardly any difference in hits, only 2 or 3. Atlanta had only 2 or 3 more over the course of the series. The difference was in homers. They were just belting it out of the park time after time. And that was what made the difference in the end. And that one, over the rail tracks, that was just such a belt. He's a big fella, but boy, he didn't half crush that, did he?
Yeah, and what you say about the Braves is, it's spot on. I think it's because, I think I've mentioned when I first started watching baseball in the late 90s, it was at Channel 5. And Johnny Gould was a presenter, and he's still involved in the sport, and he was a Braves fan. And they were big. They were, apart from the Yankees, who, that was the last great Yankee team, wasn't it? And let's hope it is the last great Yankee team. I'm only joking. Because they beat the Braves twice, I think, in the World Series in the late 90s, 95. But yeah, he was a big Braves fan. He was bigging it up, and I'm really sort of, we all are. It's strange, isn't it, that the 4 of us independently picked our own teams, and they're all American League teams. So I guess when we're watching the game, we're watching usually our teams, and they're usually playing the American League teams. But so our eye might be off the ball in terms of the National League. But yeah, good on the Braves. David.
Just talking about the American League there, I don't know if you guys, sorry to change the subject slightly, but I see that Richard's Mariners manager has been nominated for Manager of the Year for the American League, which I think I think we've got 2 nominations in our team, but that's got to be quite an interesting point, Richard. I wasn't sure if you'd spotted that news in the last few days.
I think I just heard whispers about it, Skelts. But sorry, Dave Jr., I heard whispers about it, but it's a very Yeah, it's a very deserved accolade, I think. I know it's American sport tends to be pretty not really celebrating what are losers ultimately, the people who didn't get through. But I think the Mariners, from what the expectations were, really surpassed them this season and got that kind of a young franchise as well. And some of those guys can go on to have big careers in the game, I think. So, yeah, I think it's well-deserved to be in contention, at the very least, Dave Jr.
Baseball seems to be really quite good. I'm not sure, maybe Dave and Alan know a bit more from a historic point of view, with their kind of long-standing support of the game. But in Scotland, whenever we think about awards and recognition, the old ugly sisters, Rangers and Celtic, do tend to, and we had a joke about this before the podcast tonight. Dave made some points about players joining kind of regional clubs out with the Old Firm. But in Scotland, I think because we've always got the two teams that are fighting out for everything, we're quite bad at always focusing on those players, those managers. But in baseball, the love seems to be really spread throughout. So there always seems to be a good recognition about the players and the coaching staff. And when I'm looking through all the awards, and maybe more so the nominations for this year, you don't have a whole lot of teams in there that have won the league or made it to their pennant race or made it to the World Series. You've got a real smattering of players and coaches for clubs that didn't even qualify for the postseason. So it tells me, I'm not sure your thoughts, Alan, but it tells me that there's an appreciation for the finer things in baseball, that it's not just all about who was, the Braves have won, so we've got to nominate their manager, we've got to nominate their shortstop. Let's talk about the Astros. There seems to be a recognition of all the teams in the league when it comes to these year-end awards.
Yeah, I think that's right. I had a look at the nominations earlier. So the four big awards, MVP, ROI. I was surprised going through the list that you didn't really come across players from the winning teams or the World Series teams. There's a good spread. There's a few teams, and the Blue Jays were fairly prominent in awards, but the Blue Jays had a good season up until it actually counted. The Rays had a couple of players for the Jackie Robinson Rookie of the Year award, Arozarena and Wander Franco, one of my favourite names in baseball. Garcia of the Astros, who did very well, is in there as one of the nominations. But yeah, you could quite easily see 5 nominations for Player of the Year in Scottish football, and there will be 4 from whichever one of the Glasgow teams has won the league, and 1 player from the team that hasn't won the league. That's not particularly unusual. I was impressed when I saw the Mariners manager in there. It made me think about AJ Hinch has done quite a lot at the Tigers, but obviously not enough to be one of 3 of 15 nominated for that role. Because I think I'm right in thinking of our 4 teams, there's the Mariners manager, but Lance Lynn was the only other nomination we got from any of our teams in the White Sox. So hopefully it'll be good. It'll be cool if one of those 2 guys picks up the award. Just very quickly, I'll finish my bit on the World Series as well, if I can, just with a couple of stats. I see Jock Pedersen is one of only a handful of players now. Yes, he should be in our Scottish fantasy baseball team for next year, should old Jock. But he's one of a handful of players who's won back-to-back championships with different teams now, the Dodgers and the Braves. Oddly, he actually played for the Cubs in between all that as well, because I think he left the Dodgers last season to go to the Cubs. And I was reading as well, I think he's decided not to exercise his option for the Braves next year. But I guess that's because he's got the potential for a lot of cash coming his way with that type of record. Richard made a few comments about the stats from the World Series, and I know Dave Senior had mentioned before about stolen bases being more prevalent. The good old Braves only stole one base in those 6 games against the Astros, 5. But hits were similar. But when you start talking about getting on base and slugging and what have you, the Braves did really outbat the Astros quite successfully there. And when you look at the regular top performers for the Braves team, they all seem to be hitting fairly well during the series. So their numbers came out well.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Jock Peterson there, Alan, because I was reading a good interview with the I think it's the GM of the Braves, and basically saying Dave Jr. made the point earlier on that they lost their superstar. That Ronald Acuna, his injury, they could just have said, well, listen, we'll fold for the season, we'll just see it through, we won't try and be ambitious. But they actually made a number of acquisitions just at the trade deadline that proved absolutely crucial to winning the World Series. And Jock Peterson was one that was highlighted not just for his play, but for his confidence, his belief. I think they felt that kind of character was really needed in there as well. I get the feeling he's not shy, and he's probably not shy about his own abilities either. But I think the feeling was that he really helped them get a bit of belief. And as you say, obviously having won it previously with the Dodgers as well, when he said, listen, you guys are good, you guys can be a championship team, he knew what he was speaking about as well. So I think that seems a key. We spoke previously about the kind of the midway mark of the season and teams, franchises deciding to stick or twist. The Braves decided to twist, and it paid off in the biggest fashion possible. So I think they as a franchise deserve a lot of credit for their courage as well to go for it. And obviously it paid off handsomely. In the end, although the World Series was greatly enjoyed, I certainly enjoyed it immensely. I'm a wee bit sad about Game 5, because Game 5 is likely to be the last time we see a pitcher hitting for quite a while, because it looks like the universal DH, it looks like it's going to be coming in next season as well. So if that was to be the final kind of example of the pitcher batting, the pitcher hitting, it was great that Zach Greinke, who's probably the best hitting pitcher for many a year, he hit a single, and I think he became the first pitcher to pinch hit in a World Series game since Jack Bentley of the New York Giants 98 years ago. So a nice bit of history there. Dave Jr., what do you make of that, the potential end to pitchers trying to hit?
Well, I think that our number one international fan, Mr. Otani, fan of the podcast, might take umbrage with your point about Greinke being the best hitter out there as a pitcher.
True. I kind of, to use a cricket analogy, I think of Otani as a batsman that bowls a bit rather than as a bowler that bats. But there's no doubt he's pretty damn good at both. So yeah, that's probably a fair point. And I think the proposed universal DH will allow teams will still have the option, if they're feeling masochistic, of sending their pitcher out to bat and not taking up the option of using their DH. But with the exception of Otani, I can't imagine there'll be many teams taking up that option.
Yeah, I'm still a little bit, I'm split. Again, it might just be because I've been a baseball fan for little over a year or two now. I'm still undecided about the whole pitchers hitting thing. To me, there's still a novelty attached when I see one of these guys that I'm rooting for on the mound game after game, and you see him suddenly come out once or twice a season and get a shot at the plate, and it's there's a little bit of it's the old ironic cheer from the crowd sometimes if your pitcher does get a hit. And then I do think on the other side, well, if it's a professional game, if you're trying to get your 9 best guys out there, do you want to risk injury to your pitcher, who might just he could slip when running, he could hurt himself when batting, he could be sliding into second base later on and take some studs. You do wonder if the pitcher's got to choose, what would they rather do? But there is something, a bit of a novelty, a bit of fun seeing the pitcher stepping up to the plate. And it's actually, you gifted me a book about a year ago, Richard, just reading up on baseball and some stats and data. And I was away on a break over the weekend there, and I took the book with me and just working my way through it. And there was a real good bit of science behind where the pitcher bats quite often in the lineup and exactly what they do and what they don't do. So it's not just a case of hit and hope. Quite often they were saying about the pitcher coming in at 8th to actually bat. And again, there's good reason for that. It's all to do with leading up to potentially the next inning, or getting your leadoff guy up. And I always assumed that the pitcher might come in at 9th, being the worst in the lineup. But again, baseball being baseball, there is absolute fascination around everything that's developed over the years to get to whatever the current set of rules may be at any given time.
Yorkshire Dave.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there, Dave. Brilliant. I like what you say about reading about baseball, and this is something that goes back a long time, and it comes to cricket. What do you do in the off season during the winter? Sort of, and this would be a long time before you could watch all the games on Sky and the tours to the MCC tours of Australia and the Southern Hemisphere teams. And the thing is, you would read all the books, the Wisdom Almanac and whatever great publications had come out. And I think we've talked about this before, that cricket is a great source of literature in the same way baseball is as well, famously. And that's what I kind of intend to do, is sort of revisit some of my books that I have. But the other thing about the DH is, I think it looks as though it's going to go that way ultimately, isn't it? And I tend to be sort of a bit of a traditionalist of it. And although we are all American League team fans, there's something quite exotic, as Dave says, about the pitcher hitting in the NL leagues. But the one thing I would say is, as someone who's scored a game, it's difficult enough to score an American League game. But if you want to try and print off a proper scorecard, you look at a box score from an NL game and compare it with a box score from an AL game, and you'll just see there's a lot more names on it, because the pitchers are coming in and out, and of course they're in the batting lineup, and you've got to, as a scorer, you've got to do that. So I think you probably it's probably going to help the National League scorers, if nothing else.
One thing as well about pitchers was the World Series continued the trend in baseball more widely, but of pitchers lasting fewer innings than they once did there. I think it was only 3 who went 6 innings in the decisive game. I think no other pitcher went more than 5 innings in the World Series. And I think this season there's been a continued decline in the number of innings that starting pitchers are throwing. And I wondered if we had any idea why that might be. Are they throwing more fastballs, so it's taking more out of them?
It could be. I've heard that said before. One of the things that, when we were talking about our predictions, I think I went 4-3 for the Astros. Didn't know a lot about the Braves, but I knew they had some good starting pitchers. And, that's the old adage, good pitching will always be good hitting. And I wondered if that might be the case. And, but in the first game, their ace, Charlie Morton, he started off pitching brilliantly, and he had to leave the game. He left the game, was it? I don't know quite. And he didn't quite pitch 3 innings, did he? He had what is called a comebacker, didn't he? The batter hit the ball straight at him, and it hit his leg, and he was obviously hurt. This is in the first game. He hadn't given up a run, and he actually got 2 more outs and he struck a guy out, but he had to go off. And it turned out he had a broken leg, basically, a fractured femur, which is it femur? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it is. And he's kept going for a while regardless.
Yeah, basically, the guy came on, was it Minter came on and pitched 3 or 4 innings. He pitched brilliantly. And he basically said that Charlie had struck a guy out, stood on a broken leg, which is pretty cool. But it obviously meant that he could not pitch for the rest of the series, and he would have at least pitched one other game. So for them to still go ahead and win the series with their ace out is amazing. But Max Fried is a great pitcher, and it's not quite the 3-headed monster that they talk about that when you've got 3 real aces, a 3-headed monster like the Brewers. But yeah, it makes a big difference. I think their bullpen was amazing. I was trying to work out, was it hitting or was it starting pitching or was it the bullpen? And guy Matzek and Smith, who was the closer for the Braves, I think every game that they pitched in together, they won. I think they pitched 4 times together, and they won those 4 games. And we all know the value of a good bullpen, don't we?
Absolutely, yeah. Far be it from us to do anything to knock the bullpen, but there's a view that's held that maybe the old-fashioned pitching duel is in danger of dying a death because pitchers are coming out earlier, they're not going deep into the game against each other, the starting pitchers there. And it's baseball's changing, isn't it? I guess it always has. It continues to evolve, and just seems a trend at the moment is for the bullpen to take on a bigger share of the load, and it seems to be working.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll do something about it. The game has changed over 100 odd years, and although we say we're novices, we do know quite a bit about it, don't we? And there have been changes to the rules, and they tend to do this when the batters or the pitchers get an upper hand. They do something to change it, and they have talked about if the pitchers get too much on top in terms of the hitting, and the batting averages are much lower than they have been. But maybe that's to do a bit more with the shift and what they're finding out in terms of the metrics and the data. But they've talked about lowering the mound, haven't they? And maybe they need to do something. I don't know. It's been a great season of baseball. So it's not broke, is it?
Dave Jr.
If you'll allow me to just read out a couple of segments, it's not any research that I've done, but again, it was pretty pertinent to what Dave's been talking about there. So it's jumping from one era to another, and it just does it 3 quick times. So in terms of pitching and the differences over the last few years, so in 1904, Jack Taylor pitched complete games in 39 consecutive starts. From 2006 to 2007, the Nationals played 205 consecutive games without a complete game. So again, it's just showing that quick disparity. In 1908, Ed Rulbach pitched 2 complete game shutouts in one day. In 2002, Hall of Famer Pedro Martinez pitched 2 shutouts all season. In 1920, Leon Cador and Joe Olshger both pitched all 26 innings of a 1-each tie. But in 2003, Roy Halladay made headlines by lasting all 10 innings of a 1-0 victory because it was the first extra inning complete game shutout in 12 years. So again, those 3 sets of stats, it really demonstrates, yes, you've got 100 years between them, but as you've said, the game evolves. The players evolve, or are they regressing? But these days, I think you're lucky to get out of 5 innings. If your pitcher throws 5 innings, they've probably done really well. They've thrown over 100 pitches, and they're going to get maybe heralded by their team. So it really is quite interesting when you read some of the stats, the differences over the years.
Thanks for that, Dave. That's terrific just to hear that there. It really sets it out. One thing I hadn't realised was I thought, well, they'll get tired after a certain number of pitches, and clearly there's a bit of that. But actually, I found out recently it's more about you're giving the team on offense, the team that's hitting, multiple chances to see your pitches. Yeah. So actually if you're coming up for the third time, the third at-bat of the evening or day, for example, you've maybe started to work out when it's going to be the change-up. You're maybe starting to see the fastball a bit better. I know it sounds obvious, but that had not occurred to me. But I guess that's a big part of it as well.
Yes, definitely. You're on the right track there. I've heard that said a few times. And no matter how well they talk about a pitch counter, they're sort of looking at 100 pitches, and then they think, well, that's enough. We'll take him out. He's got a pitch in 4 or 5 days' time. But yeah, I suppose if you look at the if they go 5 innings and they haven't put too many men on base, that's what, I don't know, 3, 4, 20 guys. So they are coming round to seeing you've pitched for the third time. And batsmen are pretty smart, aren't they? And they're watching what you're pitching, and they're going to be ready for it. And I think you're right. I think that's why they are taking them out, irrespective of their pitch count. And there was a moment, wasn't there, in the championship game where a guy got taken out 5 point something innings, and it was on a no hitter. But there was no way they were going to keep him in anyway. But they could have kept him in for, it was only 5.1 innings, I think. But there was no way they were going to keep him in there because, and also they're looking at the bullpen, aren't they? They want him to go 5 and 6 innings so that the bullpen doesn't have to do too much work, especially in a championship game where,
Yes, I did. I did read a lot about that particular incident where they took him out, and a lot of people were saying, well, that's a lot of dreams and hopes of young kids shattered, that they'll never get a no-hitter in the World Series. And I think there's a reality. It's a professional sport.
Mm.
There's a logic to taking a guy out after half a dozen innings, 80, 90, whatever number of pitches. It's all very well to be romantic and to see one guy do it, but it's a team game where there's a lot on the line. So it absolutely makes sense in the modern era that you take a guy out. You can talk all you want about individual glory and what have you. I think the right choice.
To quote Mr. Spock, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. If you're starting to see that picture dwindle a little bit, yes, I'm sure that would be a wonderful personal moment for that pitcher achieving the feat. But if you've got other guys coming in the back of them in the bullpen that can make sure your team gets the win they need, I do think that's got to override the needs of this year.
I think if that's in a game, second game of a 3-game series in May at home, then you're going to leave him in, aren't you? But this is the beauty of playoff baseball, isn't it? Where everything's on the line, and to a certain extent, you're not really saving yourself for the next day, because quite often there is no next day unless you win the game. So it's down to the manager's call, isn't it? And that this is where the managers, really earn their money, and you see some amazing decisions, and quite often they do work. Sometimes you think, well, why did he take him out there? But yeah, I think that's a great point, Rich, about the batsmen are getting used to. They're working out the picture, aren't they? And you're not. Well, you might just see one pitch. You might ground out or fly out. But sometimes the batsmen, they do work the picture, don't they? This is the idea, and they're supposed to do that, especially in the early innings, aren't they? To kind of almost wear out the pitcher, get him to throw more pitches, and the more pitches they see, they think, well, okay, so he's got a fast ball, he's got that, he's trying that. Is also they're working out what the umpire's strike zone is, aren't they? And for that game, and it's such a fascinating game, isn't it?
Maybe just finish off my bit for the night, Richard, when a couple of anecdotes to the broken leg situation, which so a couple of Americans, and I don't know if the chap with the broken leg, if he was an American, certainly playing America's game, but the 2008 US Open Golf at Torrey Pines was won by somebody playing with a broken leg. And that could only be Tiger Woods, whose mental strength, I think, would probably surpass pretty much anything you could expect to see in the world of golf. He basically had 2 stress fractures and a torn ACL. And not unlike pitching, your legs are fairly pivotal. There's a good dual meaning there to the game of golf. So only Tiger could do that, put himself through the pain. You could actually see him going through pain on it. In fact, it was a Monday finish. I'm not sure if that was because there was an 18-hole playoff or whether there was a rain delay. But yeah, and another American, not a broken leg, but Tyler Hamilton, the cyclist, in the first week of the 2003 Tour de France, had a double fracture of his collarbone, which, when you think of the position you're assuming on the bike, to finish the race 2.5 weeks later, and to finish it in 4th place, I think you would say chapeau to that. Although there may be those who question whether Tyler's blood doping may have helped him at that particular time as well. I'm not sure if blood doping was ever about hiding pain. I think it was more about performance enhancement. So, yeah, it does happen in professional sports. Some of these guys are pretty tough.
Absolutely. Now, just to close out the evening, I've got worrying news. I don't know if you guys will have heard, but the very future of the Highland Bullpen and all bullpens everywhere is under threat because PETA, and I think that's how the American Animal Rights Group acronym is pronounced, I'm pretty sure it's PETA, have called on baseball to change the name of the bullpen, to stop calling a bullpen because they reckon the term is outdated, insensitive to arms, and insensitive to animals, and disrespectful to the players contained within. So they would like the bullpen's name to be changed to, drum roll please, the Arm Barn. The Arm Barn rather than the bullpen. Now, we're a democratic bunch here, so I think we should take a vote on it after a quick discussion, but I don't think the Highland Arm Barn has anywhere near the same ring to it. But what do you guys make of that plea from the good folk at PETA? And I should point out we're all reasonable people here, and I think we're a group of animal lovers. We're all for animal rights, etc. But personally, and I'll let you guys come in, I think that's possibly a step or two too far.
Dave, would be okay with the Highland Barmy Army? That's the cricket, the English cricket boys of the Barmy Army, aren't they? But yeah.
I've really not heard that before, Rich. So bit strange. I don't know where the bullpen originates from, actually. Probably need to kind of look into that. So, who knows? It might have some sort of odd connotations that we might well do without. But, who's going to be annoyed about that? Could it be that the bullpen could become a word which is just bullpen? We're not objecting the writing implements, are we? I'm being very frivolous here, but perhaps the bullpen could just become a word that, unless it's come from something that really is abhorrent, God knows what it could be.
Well, I think, to be honest, Yorkshire Dave, and I'm entirely on board with your thinking on it as well. A bullpen is where bulls and cows are kept contained. Now, that could be generally they're not kept contained for happy news, ultimately.
No, they're not going on the... Whenever you see a group of animals on a truck they're not going on the holidays, are they?
No, they're not getting in line to enter the bus to Blackpool, you put it that way. So, I get the fact that the bullpen is. I actually wondered whether, obviously, because America's history and baseball's history is centred largely in the East Coast, but then you think of Chicago and other big baseball historic centres. Chicago, obviously, the home of the American meatpacking.
Yeah, the meatpacking industry. And that.
I did wonder whether it might have some reference here. So, Dave Jr. is the youngest. You might be the most woke amongst us, Dave Jr., although I don't know if that's a particularly high bar to reach, to be fair. But where do you stand on this apparent bullpen controversy?
Don't even start me. I think people are just looking for things to be offended about. And the very worst type of people are the people who are offended on behalf of other people, or in this case, animals that could not give a monkeys, or if I'm allowed to say that at all, or if the monkey regulation group might get on my back. But it's just ridiculous. As soon as a bull writes in to complain, we will change the name of the podcast to whatever they can possibly think of. But until then, just is no one getting anything to smile about in life? Life's too short. We're not calling it. It's not the slaughterhouse. It's not something like that. It's not. This is literally, from what I can see, just on a quick look there, the bullpen was originally the name for the enclosure to rope off fans on the field. It dates back to 1877, signifying the foul area in the back of the first and third bases. So that's where the term first originated in terms of baseball. And I think baseball fans, from a quick glance online, have come out and forced to come out against Peter this week.
Well, it's quite interesting because a lot of the old stadiums, grounds would have the bullpen would be just not on the pitch, off at the back. I can remember going into Fenway Park. It was a game where eventually we didn't see a ball bowled, or as they say in cricket, or a pitch made, but we saw them warming up, and Pedro Martinez was warming up. I think it might have been before they had the bullpen enclosed in centre field, and he was warming up out, and we're watching him sort of throwing these laser-like pitches into the glove of the catcher. And I think a lot of the old ballparks would have them warming up, really, they just beyond the outfield until they, enclose them. Let's call it a bullpen. I mean, they're not going to sort of. I mean, they can be quite cruel, can't they, to pitchers? But they're not going to sort of put them down, are they? If they've had a bad game.
Exactly. Yeah. So, with all due respect to Peter, and We've been reassured on this point by Hamish, the Highland Bullpen mascot. He's perfectly happy for us to abandon the arm barn idea and to stick with the bullpen. So please, listeners, please stick with the bullpen too, because we'll be back over the baseball close season with a number of special episodes. But until next time, this has been the Highland Bullpen. Have a fantastic week.